Test. Thank you all for coming out tonight. If you haven't already, I just want to alert you that there are some, there's a drawing for some Ratio sprinkler systems, smart sprinkler systems in the back. We're going to do that at the end. So if you want your name in that pot, now's your chance. So I'm Erica Archer. I'm the Louisville Sustainability Specialist. Welcome tonight. This is the third of 3 sessions with the Louisville Sustainability Series. This one is on the topic of the Louisville water system. Very happy to have you all here. This is a great crowd tonight. I see we've got a bunch of kids here. This is great. Are you guys from Louisville Elementary, or do we have some from Superior? That's great. Welcome, guys. Oh, okay. It sounds like there's a story there. Well, we'll have to catch that after the session. I'd love to hear it. I just wanted to quickly run through the agenda. That is not my agenda. Sorry. Bear with me. Sorry, just bear with me for a moment, please. Doesn't like my touch. There we go. Okay. So, a quick walk through the agenda. So we're going to hear from the City of Louisville Public Works Department tonight. We're going to, first we've got Corey Peterson up. He's going to talk to us about the water supply, the source. After that, we've got Terrell Phillips, who's going to talk to us about the water treatment and the wastewater treatment plants, which is really fun stuff. Then we're going to hear a little bit from Matt Hannon at the Partners for a Clean Environment, PACE, as some of you know it. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about business resources for water conservation. And then we're going to hear from Darren Knowles from the Center for Resource Conservation, the CRC, and the Slow the Flow program. After that, we'll do our drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Corey.
Thank you.
And I should say, too, if there are any questions, this is being videoed tonight, and we've been requested to hand you a microphone so that it can be heard by all. So I apologize for that in advance.
Yeah, I'll switch back. Yeah. It's all good. We'll make it work. So welcome, everybody. Again, my name is Corey Peterson. I'm with the city. I'm a water resource engineer. I've been with the city since 2015, so my first portion of the slide is just going to be going over water supply and where it all comes from. So here's kind of our agenda. We'll go through the treatment plant process and all of our different operations, and then we'll end it up with some conservation and sustainability tiebacks. So as most of you know, Colorado is a semi-arid climate. What that means is we get less than 20 inches of rain per year. We do a little bit better than the state on average. The state gets about 14 inches of rain. Boulder County gets about 18, so we do a little bit better here in Louisville. But a lot of our water comes from snowpack. So this is the Continental Divide. It acts as our storage bucket and where most of our supply comes from. So the city has 2 sources. The first source is South Boulder Creek, which is just straight south here. And then our other source is we get water from the Colorado Big Thompson, which is the Colorado River on the west slope. So I will start with the South Platte supply. So here is the South Platte Boulder Creek watershed. So here's Louisville down here. This is the Continental Divide hanging out over here. So the South Boulder Creek watershed is essentially half in Gilpin County, half in Boulder County, and we kind of have this little bit here in Jefferson County. We have 13 ditches the city owns water rights in, and all of those water rights take off of South Boulder Creek. Those water rights, through adjudications and court cases, we are able to exchange up to these two little red lines. Those two red lines is one, the Louisville pipeline. That was built in 1955. It's about a 5 CFS capacity pipeline, and that's where the majority of those water rights attach to. The other red line is the community ditch. The community ditch feeds Marshall Lake, which is right here. Marshall Lake is owned and operated by the Farmers Reservoir and Irrigation Company, which is an acronym, FRICO, and I have a tendency to use acronyms, so I apologize if I run on with those. But FRICO is a mutual ditch company that has 4 divisions that stretch basically from Denver all the way to Fort Morgan. And those 4 divisions are Marshall Lake, Stanley Lake, Barr Lake, and Milton Lake. The city is the largest shareholder in Marshall. We make up about 30% of that. And then as a company, we're about 5% of all of FRICO. So we're the 5th largest shareholder and have a large capacity in Marshall Lake. Another quick note, this whole watershed's about 134 square miles. So it's quite a large area of where your water is coming from. So about 80% of the city's water comes from South Boulder Creek. Here is a stream projection flow that was recreated from tree rings. So as you can see, it goes all the way back to 1550. And you can just kind of see the variation of the stream flows as it goes through. The other thing that we noted is if you kind of look here towards the bottom, this is the recorded drought years that we've had in the past. And you can see how significant you go from 100,000 acre feet to 20,000 acre feet. An acre foot is something that we use in the water community. An acre foot is an entire acre 1 foot deep of water. So it's a volume that they measure. It's roughly 326,000 gallons, or enough supply for 2 of an average Louisville home. So that kind of gives you an idea of what you're talking about as far as stream flow. You can also see that with this variation, that storage is a very big component of our water supply, and that's why we rely very heavily on Marshall Lake and then a couple local storage places, which is Louisville Reservoir and Harper. So Louisville Reservoir is just outside of our North Water Treatment Plant, or our Sid Copeland Treatment Plant, which is right over here on South Boulder Road. It's about 210 acre feet of water that it holds. And then I don't know how many people have been to Harper, but Harper holds about 715 acre feet to kind of give you a rough schedule of what that looks like. So again, as storage is such a key piece, I'm going to flip back here. So this is the snowpack data from the NRCS for the entire South Platte Basin, which is what we're in. You can see this kind of dark purplish color here is actually this year, so it's 2018. So we're kind of tracking right along where we are. We kind of have this little dip with this last little bit of warm weather, and that puts us at about 90% of average. So it kind of gives you something that we look at on a very regular basis to determine where we are as far as a water supply and where we're going in the future. Just kind of an interesting note, if everybody remembers last year we had that late snowstorm, so we were actually tracking below our average, and we're contemplating what we might have to do as far as restrictions. You know, we kind of have various levels and might do voluntary and stuff like that. But we had those late snowstorms in May and June, which kicked us back into a very good year, and we were able to avoid any restrictions. So just kind of a side note. So the other place that we get water from is the Colorado Big Thompson. This is a project that was started in 1938. It took till 1957 for most of this stuff to get constructed. The Big Thompson project was done by Northern Water Conservancy District, and they were in conjunction with the Bureau of Reclamations. So it was a federal project, and it was designed to take West Slope water and bring it over to the east. If you look right in here, this is where Louisville is. So that little watershed that I was showing you was this little piece right here. And then this is all encompassing of the CBT water. So what the CBT is it actually started with Green Mountain Reservoir here in 1938. That was a requirement of the project to get going forward. It provided a supplemental supply back to the Colorado River to offset what CBT was bringing forward. Lake Granby was the next piece. That was started in 1940s, as that's when it started its construction. There's a smaller Shadow Mountain Reservoir that gets pumped from Lake Granby into Shadow Mountain, and that then can drain into Grand Lake. Grand Lake is the largest natural body in the state of Colorado, which is kind of a cool fact. And then from outside of Grand Lake, it goes in the Adams Tunnel. The Adams Tunnel was built in 1944 is when they were able to hole through. And what that means is they actually constructed from both west and east at the same time. And when they went through, the tunnel was off by a 1/16 of an inch. And this was in 1940. So it's very, very impressive that they were able to pull that off. The tunnel itself is a little over 9 feet tall, and it's 13 miles long. Once it comes out the other side, it goes through a couple smaller lakes that they can use to generate power and offset their operating costs. And they can go into 3 storage reservoirs. It can go into Horsetooth, it can go into Carter, or it can come down here into Boulder Reservoir. Louisville's water ends up in Carter Lake. That's where our water gets stored. And from there, it goes into what they call what we're part of, which is the Southern Water Supply Pipeline. And that's this little red line that comes right down here. And that's shared amongst most of our neighbors. So Lafayette, Erie, Superior, Broomfield, all of these surrounding communities use the same pipeline to get water from the CBT system out of Carter Lake to us. We have about 2,000 units in CBT, and what a unit is basically a half to 0.7 acre feet of water. So we get about 1,000 acre feet of water from the CBT system, and that makes up about 20%. The exciting thing that we're in the process of now is a subset of the CBT system, which is Windy Gap, which is right here. The Windy Gap Reservoir started in way back when. It was 1967 is when it was first started as a project. There were lots of lawsuits with this one on the West Slope, so it took all the way till 1985 before they actually constructed the reservoir. So it took about 15 years to get them all the way through and built. And what Windy Gap allows us to do is it allows us to catch water off of the Fraser River and pump it back into Lake Granby, and then it can use the rest of the CBT system and go the rest of the way through. It's been a very good water right, but it's a junior water right. And what a junior water right is everything's based off of a priority system in Colorado. And a priority system it's whoever was first gets to use their full amount that they allocated. So if I was the first farmer to set up a ditch, I get all my water first, and then the second guy gets their water, and so on down the line. So by being a junior water right, that means if there's senior guys ahead of you, they can call you out and prevent you from diverting water. So the solution that, because it's such a junior right, the city and Northern are looking to do what they call the firming project. And the firming project is a new reservoir that'll be adjacent to Carter Lake. It's called the Chimney Hollow Reservoir. I don't know if many of you have heard of that one, but it'll be about the same size. It'll be another 90,000 acre foot reservoir that'll allow us to take the Windy Gap water and bring it over and put it in a place of storage. So it's this project has actually just started in design. They've started doing the pre-planning, and we're looking at construction next year Total project costs are over $40 million right now. Louisville obviously doesn't have a big chunk of that. We're only about 3%, but that still equates to about $12 million that the city's looking at expending over the next 20 years as this project is financed. So here's a little timeline just to kind of tie everything together. There's also this gray line here is the population of Louisville as we go through. So the one I like to start with is the oldest right that the city owns, the most senior right, is from 1860. So that's where the city's oldest water starts. State 1876, and then Louisville was founded in 78. So that kind of gives you this idea. Louisville Reservoir, the one that's over by our Sid Copeland water treatment plant, that was actually built in 1888. So it's been diverting and holding water for the city of Louisville since 1888, which is pretty impressive to have that kind of structure in place. I just threw kind of some other pieces in here. We have the North Plant was actually built in 1934. That's when we actually had a water treatment plant. Prior to that, it was a wet well at the end of the reservoir that they just stuff carbon in that they would use to kind of give it a little bit of filtration before it came down the hill. So in 1934, we had our actual first plant. What that was is it was basically just a sand filter. So it essentially, that's all water treatment is a sand filter, and we kind of had various upgrades throughout the years. Here's, again, is when the CBT project started in 1938. The Department of Health was formed several years after that. So again, we're providing a source before a lot of these regulations and treatment processes were even in place. Carter Lake was, again, done in 1950. We started upgrading the North Plant in 1951. We added more filtration to it, made it a little bigger. Our wastewater plant was also built in 1951. Again, Terrell will kind of go over some of this stuff in more detail, but that was kind of the driver for it. We had our first expansion of the wastewater plant in 1965. Our first wastewater plant was just a settling pond with some aeration lagoons. And then we went to an extended activated sludge where we were actually actively pushing air into the system, which is all part of the treatment process. We added a 2.5 million gallon storage tank for system pressure in 1966 there. So what that does is that's out by our Howard Berry plant, which is on the south part of town, and that allows the pressure within the city to stay at the level that it can get to all your homes. We expanded the wastewater plant a second time in 1973. We went to a larger lagoon system. We went to 4 lagoons. We actually did that again in 78 where we went to a 6 lagoon system. And again, that was just more capacity to allow for this trend of more people coming into town and being in place. We had another expansion of our water plant as well, and that was a new sedimentation basin as well as an automatic backwash, which was kind of state-of-the-art back then. Here's the Windy Gap project, which I mentioned before. And then probably the biggest one is right here in 1993. We built a second treatment plant. This is our Howard Berry treatment plant. It's actually out on South Marshall Road, and it is a 5 MGD facility. And that kind of really, again, kept up with us as far as population control and those type of things and being able to provide everything. Let's see here. I'm trying to think. The kind of more recent activity, in 2014, we've done some upgrades at our Howard Berry plant. We put in solid drying beds. Basically what that does is it allows us to handle the treatment, the various chemicals and the process as we go through. We also have a larger wastewater plant upgrade that went through in 2015. This was about a $37 million project that actually just wrapped up about a couple months ago. This was a full renovation, so we went to 3 aeration basins and new clarifiers, and it was a full reno and was quite impressive to go through. And then, again, here's the Windy Gap project that we have going forward for next year. So that's kind of it as far as a supply. I'll go ahead and drop it off to Terrell here, and he'll go through the plants.
All right, thanks, Corey. I'm Terrell Phillips. I'm the superintendent for the water and wastewater plant. So I'm going to talk about the process, taking it from the raw sources that Corey just explained and through the water to the discharge of Coal Creek. So we'll start with our two plants. We have the Howard Berry, which was our newer plant, and the Sid Copeland plant, which was named after the superintendent that was with the city over 25 years. So he was my predecessor. Excuse me. It's dry in here. So the Sid Copeland has an 8 million gallon per day capability, and the Howard Berry is about 5 million. So currently, we don't always run the Howard Berry all year round. We use it kind of as a peaking plant, or we kind of juggle between them as major projects or maintenance comes up. So typically in the off season when the water demand's a lot lower. So we start with preliminary treatment. So we have the water sitting in the reservoir, and we want to make sure that we don't get a lot of algae growth in there, because when we have a lot of algae, that's when the water tastes funny, smells funny, and we get a lot of phone calls from you guys going, what's going on? So we try to mitigate that as much as we can. So we have a solar bee, which takes the water and it just keeps circulating, and that helps keep the algae from growing and blooming. We also apply a chemical chlorine dioxide, which oxidizes the taste and odor compounds. So these are some of the steps that we do to make the water taste good. This year we've done a lot more studies and tests to watch the algae and to treat it when the algae counts get higher. So hopefully you guys noticed that this year that the water last year, I don't think we did as well of a job as we did this year. So hopefully you guys see that. So pre-treatment. So the water comes from the reservoir. It comes in the front, and we have basically 3 steps. Or 4 steps. We have coagulation, flocculation, and sedimentation. So in the beginning with coagulation, we have our flask mixers. So the water's coming in, and we're hitting it with chemicals, alum, polymer, and ACH, right from the front. And we have this mixture going on quickly because we want to get those particles. We want the chemical to coat them so they start getting a little bigger, making them want to stick together a little bit. And so just gonna kind of keep bouncing back and forth. So the building that you see up there is the pre-treatment. So we have all these chemicals in that building, and then at the very top of this picture is where the flash mixer chamber is. So we have 2 motors and these mixers that are just mixing these chemicals in the water. So from there, we go to flocculation. So we're still mixing, but we're mixing a little bit slower, because now we've got the particles that we formed in coagulation, but now we want the particles to be bigger. So we have to slow down the mixing, because if we keep mixing as fast as we do in the first step, we'll break them apart, we'll shear them. So we do a little slower mixing, and that lets the particles start getting a little bigger, start coming together with the chemicals that we put in there. And just to kind of, so that's kind of going on in the middle. Can't really see it, but the middle part is kind of where the flocculation's happening. And we have 2 mixers at the Howard Berry plant. And then for the sedimentation, now these particles are sticking together, they're getting bigger. Now they're getting heavier and denser than water. And so they start settling out to the bottom of the process, and we just have the cleaner water on top. So we have sedimentation, and then that moves us on to filtration. So as Corey mentioned earlier, we have sand filters. We have rapid sand filters, which is technology they've been using for hundreds of years. It's pretty old, but it works, and we still use it today. We actually have a project this year to replace some of this media. That'll happen January, February of next year. But the sand filter has a layer of coal, sand, garnet, and gravel. And just to kind of let you see what that looks like, I've got a side profile so you can kind of see the different layers. And then this is the actual filter at the Howard Berry plant. So the water goes through this filter, and that sand filter pulls out all those particles, so that all those big particles that settled out or that didn't settle out that kind of made it to the filter actually get pulled out. And then the last thing we do is disinfect it. We want to make sure that any microorganisms that made it this far are inactivated. So we apply chlorine, which is also something that we're required to do from the state. So chlorine ranges, we can't get any lower than 0.2 milligrams per liter. If we do, we have to call all you guys and let you know. And we also have to call the state and let them know, because it's a big deal. and it can't get any higher than 4 milligrams per liter. Currently, our target is about 1.7. We have all our parameters on the web right now, so if you ever want to see what our manganese or copper or anything like that, all the things we test for, it's all on our website. It's up to date. You can see our pH levels. It's a pretty good reference point. When we chlorinate, we have a clear well where we have to have a certain amount of time that the state requires with the chlorine to make sure that we inactivate any microorganisms that have made it that far. Shouldn't be any, but this is kind of a step just to make sure. So sits in the clear well for the required amount of time, and then it goes into storage tanks. We have 3 storage tanks in our system, kind of spread out through the city strategically. We don't all want our water storage to be in one spot, so we have 3 tanks. We have a low zone tank that can hold 3 million gallons. We have a mid zone that can hold 3.5 million gallons, and then we have a high zone, which can hold 2 million gallons for a total of about 8.5 million gallons in storage. In the summertime, that'll last us about a day. In the wintertime, closer to a week, but just to show you the kind of the difference that watering the lawn makes in the summer, because we're still showering, we're still taking baths and doing laundry in the winter, but our water demand drops by that much from summer to winter. And that's why we have to turn on the other plant, because the 8 million gallons that the St. Copeland plant can do doesn't provide enough water for the city. So anyways, that's a picture of 2 of our tanks. They're a lot taller than they look in this picture if you ever get to see them. So once it goes to the tanks, it goes to distribution, goes to your house, and then you guys use it and you send it back to the city through the wastewater plant that just got upgraded. So what is the objective of wastewater? Well, we want to take all the bad things that can hurt the environment and hurt us and make us sick. We want to dispose of it properly, make sure everyone's healthy, and also repurpose it when we can. So we can't really control what comes into the wastewater, but we can control and limit what comes out of it. So one thing to note, like some of the things that come to the wastewater plant shouldn't come. Dental floss isn't something that you want to flush down the toilet. Feminine products, other products that people use, those cause problems to pumps. They don't really aid the process, so just kind of a note that those things need to go in the trash. It just keeps prices down, it keeps pumps healthy, and it makes the process a lot better. So water that comes in, we call Effluent, and basically it's either going to come out as water or it's going to come out as solids. And we'll talk about both of those tracks. So here's a quick process overview that we'll dive into a little bit deeper, but Effluent comes into the plant. It goes through a flow meter because we're required by the state to see how much water is coming in and how much water is going out, so we pay attention to those things. Goes through a bar screen and grit basin. Bar screen pulls out the bigger inorganics and things that don't really help our process. Grit basin pulls out some of that sedimentation and sand that's in the process. So we try to clean it up a lot before we start treating it. Goes to the aeration basin, secondary clarifier, and then we'll talk about the solids track is one way out of the plant, and we'll talk about the water plant. So everything goes through this process, but at the clarifier, it's got 2 paths to get out. And we'll talk about that in more detail. So what is Effluent? It's everything you flush down the toilet or put in your sink, everything that goes down the drain is what we call Effluent. And most of residential wastewater, 99% of it is just water. The other 1% is total dissolved solids and total suspended solids. So most of it's just water. So we start off with the preliminary treatment, which I tried to show in the overview, where we remove some of the debris, some of the larger inorganic products. This helps protect the pumps, and it makes our process a little bit more stable. So we try to pull what we can out, and this building's called the Headworks, where all this equipment's stored at. From the Headworks, it goes to the aeration basin, and we mix this liquid with air to feed our microorganisms. Microorganisms are a lot like us. They require food, they require oxygen, and in the ideal environment, they reproduce. So this is important because our waste is their food. So we try to make this environment perfect for them so they can reproduce, so they can eat, and start breaking down some of that waste that we have. From there, it goes to the clarifier. As Corey mentioned, we have 3 clarifiers now. They're brand new with the new upgrades. And so just like the water plant, the solids kind of spread out and the heavier ones start settling out and you're left with the cleaner water on top of the process. This is good because on the edge of these clarifiers, we call it the weirs, and that clean water will just flow over the weirs and head to that building that's right behind, which is called the UV building, where the solids will go down to the bottom of the clarifier. So in the UV building, we expose it to ultraviolet light to inactivate the microorganisms, and then we discharge to Coal Creek. The water that we're putting in Coal Creek actually improves the water quality because we've done the filtration and UV, so we actually improve Coal Creek with the water that we discharge. And I would say in the early 1900s, the water that we're discharging from the wastewater plant is cleaner than what people probably drank in 1920s, 1910s. So we've moved up. The standards keep getting more and more strict. So in the clarifier, I talked about solids settling down to the bottom. Well, when they go to the bottom, we pump into the digester. We keep giving the microorganisms air, but we stop giving them food. So we kind of put them on a diet and shrink them up a little bit. The reason we do this is we pay money to get the solids removed from the plant. We don't want the bugs to be healthy and heavy. We want them to be skinny and light as possible to save us money. So we kind of put them on a diet, let them get a little smaller, and then the digester's concentration's about 1.5% to 2% solids. Once we have them settle out in the digester, we send them through the centrifuge, which spins really fast. It gets the water out of the process, and we go from about 2% solid to 16% solids. And then the cake gets kind of corkscrewed through the centrifuge, and the water we just send back through the process again. All that solid sludge that we pull out, we load up trucks 2 to 3 times a week. We have a contract with a company named Veris, and then they haul all the solids away from us. Actually, I'm preparing a council communication right now for the 19th to renew this contract, because every year we send out bids and we compare prices to make sure that we're getting the best prices for the citizens. This solid is also land applied in Weld County. So this is a sustainability speech, so I wanted to tie in some of the reuse water. So reuse water is water that has been converted through the wastewater. So we try to use some of that water because it's cheaper to use than potable water. So where do we use reuse water in the city of Louisville? Well, we use it at the golf course for irrigation. We use it to fill up the ponds at the ball field, and we use it for the community park, the dog park. So each day we have about 1.6 million gallons of water discharged from the wastewater plant, which is about 50 million gallons per month, and then on average about 600 million gallons per year. And we use about 4.2 million gallons a year for reuse. So we try to lower costs wherever we can and use this water twice or reuse it. And that's pretty much the process for water and wastewater. Any questions for me before I hand it over to Matt from PACE? Yes, sir? Okay, I appreciate that. Diapers, dental floss, flushable wipes are not good for pumps. Oh, sorry. Not used to talking to a microphone. Yeah, sorry. Just to repeat, the question was what kind of things get flushed down the toilet that are bad for the system. And dental floss, flushable wipes aren't good for the system. I'm trying to think of what else we get. Feminine products sometimes, things like that. They're not good for the pumps. They get tangled up. And so we have equipment that takes some of that stuff out, but some of it does cause problems.
And for example, food disposal in the sink, should be avoided?
We talked about the microorganisms having food, and so garbage disposals, you're grinding up your food and you're sending a lot of food, and so we have to pay attention to how much food and how much BOD loading is coming in. Our plants have ratings. Right now, our plant, because we just upgraded, so we're in a good spot for BOD. But if BOD does get too high, and then we would have to expand and things like that. We're nowhere near that, but it does create additional loading on our plant. We also have limits for BOD and total suspended solids, and so when we have an industrial user that's exceeding those limits, they actually get fined, and we have prices for them sending too much because requires more money, more pumps running for us to treat the process.
Yeah, no, I'll jump in a little bit too. From a residential side, you really don't see a big impact. It's like what Terrell was saying. It's the high industrial users that generate a lot of organics, is what we call them. I'll go close.
Okay, several of my friends have been getting letters from Boulder at the Potasso Reservoir and some of my patients at the hospital as well. Do we share the same problem with Hexavalent Chromium 6 that they've got?
It's a very good question. I haven't heard any issues with that so far. I'd have to do some research and find out what Boulder is going through, but okay. And that was to Boulder residents? Yeah. Okay. What I can do is get your information and do a little research for us. I know that all the requirements for the state, we're meeting them, and we're not close on anything. We do a lot of tests, and I can't tell you that I have them all memorized, but they are on the web, all the things we do test for, as well as the limits. We do hundreds of tests per month, not exaggerating. There's a lot of things we test for.
What happens if hair goes down in the drain?
Hair is organic, so it actually breaks down, and the microorganisms can actually eat that. So hair doesn't hurt our system. It's part of the natural process.
What kind of controls are there on industry discharges to the wastewater system?
We monitor our industrial users for BOD, how much food they send down our way, or we monitor them for TSS. You might tell them what BOD is. Biological oxygen demand. I like to think of it as food for the microorganisms. I think that's the easiest way to put it. TSS and fats, oils, and grease. We limit on how much oils and grease they send down to the process because that affects us adversely as well. So a lot of the businesses have grease traps, and we actually make them keep grease on site and then get pumped out instead of sending it to the wastewater plant.
I know you're doing some upgrades to the wastewater treatment plant, above at the reservoir. Can you speak to what you're doing up there and kind of give a sense of where you are in the process?
Upgrades for the water plant?
Yes.
Okay.
I can tackle that one. So what we're doing at the North Plant is we're putting in a new pump station. What the pump station is for is we have an existing pump station for our high zone, which delivers to that 2.5 million gallon tank. It was put in the 80s, and it's just falling apart. The pumps are falling off of their curves, so we're ending up with cavitation within the system. So we're building a new standalone pump station that will replace the existing one. So it allows us to keep the plant operational while the new one is going in. So that's what's happening. Tied with that, we're gonna have a new water line connection out of that pump station that will go over to our mid zone, and that's kind of in the middle of the city. I guess just give a broader overview. Our pressure zones are divided in a third. So basically if you take everything north and west of Via Appia, that's kind of the high zone. And then the kind of through the McCaslin area is the mid zone. And then kind of the east side of town, Main Street and those things are our low zone. So that's what we're doing up at the Sid Copeland plant. I think there was.
Can you tell us more about how the storage tank is constructed and how it works?
Yeah, so most of our storage tanks are all concrete. So they were poured in levels. Again, depending on when they went in, that's essentially all it is just a concrete cylinder with a concrete roof on the top. And then most of our tanks just have one inlet and one outlet, so we pump the water in and it can go out the same way. I think we got a few more minutes here.
We have 4 or 5 more minutes, I think.
You talk about our effluent going into Coal Creek. Are there earlier, does our water supply have effluent going into it?
Great question.
So by default, yes. Our water supply does have wastewater discharge that goes into it. Going back to those maps, you have communities like Netherland and Rawlins. Most of the farm rural areas, they'll just have septic systems. So by default, that will end up in the stream. So you do have kind of naturally occurring effluent in just about every supply. Unfortunately, it's just you're always downstream from somebody is the thing that we say. We can do one more, a couple more.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if you knew a figure for the amount of energy that goes into wastewater and water treatment, say as a municipal cost in Louisville. An amount or percentage, et cetera.
It's not cheap. I remember that. We spend quite a bit of, I think our annual budget for electricity for the wastewater plant alone is about $250,000 a year. I'm trying to think of what the water
I think the water plant was a little bit more than that. I think we spent about $500,000 in power costs between all three plants. Oh, sure.
Yeah, so kilowatt hours, I think it's like 8 cents a kilowatt. I remember the dollars, but I don't remember what the kilowatt is, but it's about 8 cents per kilowatt. At solar, we have solar farms at the wastewater plant and the water treatment plant. And that accounts about 5% of our energy use that we get back from the solar.
Yeah, and just kind of adding to that with expansion at the wastewater plant, one of the things we were able to do is it's a more energy intensive process, but we actually kept our consumption the same because we were able to bring in more efficient equipment and just newer equipment. So our efficiencies really went through the roof as far as having the new plant.
I'm Jay Keeney. I'm on the City Council. One of the things I wanted to say is we've made commitments citywide. We've purchased about 50% of the energy the city uses from solar. So we've purchased solar capacity in solar farms as opposed to putting them in ourselves. It gives us a better return on our investment. So we've actually made investments. We're not getting all of that yet, but we've made commitments to get up to 50% of our energy that we use in sitting buildings, in the rec center for the wastewater and water treatment plant. 50% of that will be coming from solar within a few years as those solar farms are built out.
Can you talk a little bit about what kind of tests there are to ensure that the water coming into our homes is comparable to what's in the treatment plants?
So we do a lot of tests. We look at pH, we look at lead and copper. That's a big one after Flint, and the state is changing some of the rules on how frequent we did that. Our rates have been so low in Louisville that previously we were only required to do lead testing every 5 years, but now we do it every year because that's what the state wants to see. We look at chlorine, we look at turbidity. We don't want a lot of particles in your water. I'm trying to think of what else is like really big. Chlorine levels, color.
And we also do in-system monitoring. So we'll go to, there's certain residents that allow us to test their water directly. And then we're able, we'll do city facilities as well, because obviously that's there. So we collect from the source and do tests from the system itself.
And when people have concerns, they can call the water plant. We'll send a team out there and they'll do tests on your tap water for free, just to address any concerns you have.
Last one here.
Has there ever been so much chlorine in the water treatment that it's become a hazard?
So our targets are between 0.2 and 4 milligrams per liter, and our target's about 1.7. So we make sure when we get to 2, we start reacting very quickly to make sure it doesn't go up. If we do actually have a thing, which we haven't in my time here, it'll be in a newspaper. We're required to tell all the residents. We also would put in your annual report. So we're not really allowed to keep secrets. We have to be very transparent and let everyone know what's going on. And so we do a pretty good job here, I believe.
So I had recalled seeing something on the Hexavalent Chromium 6 issue and dug up a citation. And I'm going to quote from Pure Water Gazette. For some reason, Boulder's Chromium 6 level is higher than nearby communities. Louisville reported non-detect or 0 levels of the contaminant. And that's consistent with Lafayette and Longmont as well. So it appears that while there may be an issue in Boulder, it doesn't appear to be a significant issue in Longmont or Lafayette, at least according to this citation.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. All right, I'm going to pass this over to Matt from PACE. Thank you again.
Great, thank you very much, Terrell. My name is Matt Hannon. I'm a business sustainability advisor with the Boulder County Partners for a Clean Environment program, or PACE program, another acronym for you guys to remember. And basically what the PACE program does is provides advising services, rebates, and offerings to businesses in Boulder County. So I work a lot in Louisville, work with a lot of businesses on Main Street, McCaslin, and I'm just going to kind of give you guys a quick overview of what the PACE program does. We're kind of the one-stop shop for sustainability in Boulder County. So we kind of cover 4 main areas: energy, waste, water, and transportation. Energy is obviously a really big one. We provide rebates for businesses to upgrade their lighting, put solar panels on the roofs, and then I go out to businesses and look around for little things like weather stripping under the door and things that people might not think about, but actually cost them a lot of money on their electric bills. And then from the transportation side of things, not quite as much work there, but we help advise businesses on electric vehicle charging station grants, and we give out bike racks. So we got a great bike rack program we just launched this year, where any business that wants up to 5 free bike racks can receive them, and I go out and site them and deliver them. So it's a great little offering that we have. On the waste side of things, we obviously do quite a bit there. Louisville is doing great. From the waste side of things, you can see there's compost, recycling, and trash, which is great to see. And then my program gives out recycling bins to businesses. We do waste training, so I'll bring out a big bag of random recyclables and compostables and trash, and we'll play a fun sorting game with employees. And we actually did it with the city of Louisville. Terrell and Erica organized it and did, and I think about 60 city employees are now very well versed on what to recycle and compost, which is great. And then we do custom signs as well to help with diversion. Obviously, we do water as well. That's why I'm here tonight, is to chat a little bit about water. And so we have offerings there as well. And actually, on this table over here, I put a couple of these little guys out. And these are aerators. And so these go right on the bottom of your faucets. So you probably all have faucets at home. Businesses all have them. And these are high-efficiency aerators. So I have 2 types here. And you guys, I've put a bunch out if anyone wants to take one. But we have 1.5 gallon minute aerators and 1/2 gallon a minute. And most sinks, pretty much all in your houses or in businesses, at least 4 or 5 years old, are about 2.2 gallons per minute. So if you think about restaurants, how often people are washing their hands, how often do your dishes at home, you upgrade these to a 1.5 or 0.5 gallon per minute aerator, and you're saving a lot of water over time. So we install those for free at businesses. Restaurants have big sprayers in the back that you use on dishes called pre-rinse spray valves. Those are actually really expensive and nice, and we give and install those out as well, which is a really cool thing. So those are kind of our 2 main water offerings. And we also do stormwater outreach. So there's a county-wide partnership called the Keep It Clean Partnership, and they basically make sure, as best they can, that no nasty oils and greases from restaurants, auto body shops, businesses in general, seep out of dumpsters, out of garages, and into the water stream, or into rivers, streams, and into the water that you're eventually drinking. So I do some advising there, and I just go around and quite literally walk alleyways and peek in dumpsters and make sure there's no active discharges of nasty things that should not be going into the water. And so that's just kind of in a nutshell what we do. I left a little bit of information up here about just kind of helpful tips. Obviously, if someone wants an aerator, you can take these. My business card, because I actually have to run in just a couple of minutes, so if anyone has any questions, works with businesses or has any ideas for businesses that could use our services, it's totally free, totally county funded, which is really awesome. And then we also, a quick plug for our Louisville Green Business Recognition Program. We actually launched it last year and recognized 32 businesses here in Louisville that are doing really, really great stuff environmentally, socially, and then economically, buying local, composting, have solar on the roof, and the application period is open for 1 more month. If you know any businesses that might be interested in gaining some free PR, we had a great dinner last year with the mayor and the city council. And then we do a shout out on the city website, our website, some newspapers. So it's a really great program, and we're launching it. We launched it last year. This is the second year we have it. If anyone wants any freebies, my card's up there as well. Unfortunately, I do have to run another event up in Longmont, but I'm happy to follow up with anybody via email or phone. Thank you.
Bear with me one moment while I get my presentation set up. All right, so my name is Darren Knowles. I'm the Water Programs Manager for Audit and Retrofit Programs with the Center for Resource Conservation, or CRC. And I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'll try to kind of go through this a little quick. So not too different than PACE, CRC also works with water conservation. However, we work mainly with residential use of water. So tonight I'm just going to tell you a little bit about CRC and then some of the water conservation programs that we have on offer to City of Louisville residents. So CRC got its start about 40 years ago. We are a nonprofit whose mission is to put conservation into action. So we are very action-oriented. We really don't have a lot of activity in policy or advocacy. It's really about empowering homeowners and businesses to conserve water. We started initially just purely based on energy, and over time have kind of evolved into offering waste diversion and water programs as well. Obviously, we're here to talk about water, so we split our water programs into 2 different areas, landscape programs and then audit and retrofit programs. So we'll talk first about our audit and retrofit programs, namely Slow the Flow. So we have Slow the Flow outdoor and indoor. On the outdoor side of things, we offer free irrigation inspections or free sprinkler inspections. These are completely free through a very generous partnership with the City of Louisville, so you can definitely thank them for that. So essentially, we send our technicians out to inspect your sprinkler system, first turning it on, looking for any problems that are going to waste water, any geysers, any broken pipes, anything that's going to reduce the efficiency of your sprinkler. And then we'll also fix or make any little fixes right then and there, but generally we're going to be recommending how to fix those problems. And then we'll run some tests to see how much water is being emitted, how evenly it's being distributed. And with that, we're able to calculate a customized watering schedule specifically for your sprinkler system. And on average, just the schedule alone saves about 5,000 gallons of water. So we do this, oops, it looks like my picture kind of cut off. So over time, we've been doing this since 2004. We average about 1,600 sprinkler inspections throughout Boulder County and just pretty much the whole Front Range every year. And then this past year, we did nearly 2,000 audits. And since then, or since 2004, we've combined to save about 108 million gallons of water just through Slow the Flow outdoor. On the indoor side of things, we're looking at the flow rates of your faucets, of your shower heads. We're checking for leaks in your toilets just to prevent any waste of water through those. And then we also offer free upgrades to those little faucet aerators that Matt had laid out. And then we also offer free shower heads as well. So these are high-efficiency shower heads, usually at 1.5 gallons per minute. And then at the end of the inspection, we give the homeowner a detailed report of what they can do in order to save even more water. So that could be changing out their toilet to a new higher efficient model or swapping out their washing machine. And then we also give them kind of a cost-benefit analysis on that. So we've done almost 1,700 inspections since 2011. It's a relatively new program. We've saved 9.5 million gallons of water directly through those fixture swaps. And if everyone actually follows all of our recommendations for the other water conservation changes that they could make in their home, we have the potential of saving an additional 22 million gallons of water. And then right back to the outdoor side of things, we also offer, as a special treat to the City of Louisville residents, we actually don't do it anywhere else, so you guys are really, really lucky for being Louisville residents. We offer smart controller installations, and also you guys are lucky enough that we have, I think, 4 that we're giving away tonight through this drawing. So the Ratio Generation 2 smart controller is a really fun, yes, I'm saying fun and sprinklers at the same time, and we're not running through like little kids. So it's a really neat little tool that you install, and basically you don't necessarily have to think about your sprinkler system and how to set it. You don't have to go out there every single season to, turn it back on and change everything. It connects to the local weather stations via Wi-Fi and automatically programs what your specific yard or what your sprinkler system should be watering based on a number of things, including how much sun your yard gets, how much of a slope do you have, the precipitation rate of your sprinkler system. So again, because of a partnership with the City of Louisville, we're able to offer these for free to the residents of Louisville. However, it's very limited quantity, and you have to have also gotten a free sprinkler inspection, because we will take the data that we've collected through that sprinkler inspection and then actually program the Ratio for your system. So in addition to programming it, we will actually mount it, we'll do all of the wiring for you, and then we'll also go ahead and set the schedule and basically show you kind of how to set the schedule, so that just in case there are any issues or power outages or anything like that, if your schedule is lost, you have the power to actually go ahead and reset it yourself. We also do offer high-efficiency toilet upgrades. This is actually through a partnership with Boulder County, but we're able to offer, I think this past year, I think we offered maybe 12 to 15 toilets. So I don't know how many we're going to be offering next year, but essentially the Boulder County kind of prorates the cost of a toilet. So you have two different options in how to get one of these toilets. You can do a self-install or a technician install. Obviously, the self-install is a little bit cheaper than the technician install, but with a technician install, we'll take away your old toilet, we'll put the new one in, and then we'll go ahead and recycle all the old ones in either of those. And these are using 0.8 gallon per flushes, or 0.8 gallon per flush toilets. Usually you'll probably have a 1.6 gallon per flush toilet in your home, unless you have bought a brand new one, which is 1.28 gallons. And then on our landscape program side, we have Garden in a Box, which is basically putting water conservation into action via landscape change. So this is an easy and affordable way to use xeric or low water using plants to beautify your lawn, or hopefully take out some turf, take out your lawn, and beautify your entire yard, and save some water by doing it. So these are small do-it-yourself gardens that come in 1 to 2 flats, 15 to 30 starter plants, and they're accompanied by a very detailed plant and care guide, as well as a plant by number map. So it's really simple. I've installed 3 in my own property, and it's really, really tough to mess up. And it's a lot of fun. So this is essentially what a garden could look like after maybe 4 or 5 years of establishment. This is actually very picture perfect. This is a rendering. It may not look exactly as beautiful as this, but unless you have a green thumb, then maybe it'll look even better than this. But this is essentially what you get when you first pick it up. And then hopefully after a few years, it'll turn into that. And then this is what the plant by number map looks like. So you can follow the map. A lot of them have a couple different designs. Or you can, venture out on your own and put it in however way you see fit in your property. That's actually what I did most recently. I had a far too small of a space for the garden that I got and had to cut out a few plants. So this is just a picture of how easy it really is to plant one of these gardens. So each garden is relatively small, but you can always buy multiple. So there's 60 to 100 square feet. These are 2017 prices, so they could be a little bit different, but they range in price from about $75 to $150, and that's without the discount. But again, because of a partnership with the City of Louisville, they cover $25 towards that initial cost, and it is limited. I think it's 120 or something like that. Yeah, so not everyone can get that discount, so what I would recommend is actually signing up for the pre-sale list if you go to conservationcenter.org/gardens, and they will notify you when you can kind of purchase your garden in the first come, first serve. So the sooner you do it, the more likely you are to get that discount. So the reason that these are so successful, other than they're beautiful, is that xeric or low water using landscapes use 60% less water than that traditional turf lawn. So it's a great, so if you're thinking about getting rid of your grass, this is a great substitute for turf. And this is through 2016, but I think through 2017 we've saved about 85 to 90 million gallons of water through the cumulative life savings of the program. And then we've converted, I think 1.2, or helped to convert 1.2 to 1.3 million square feet of landscape to these low water landscapes. And I think since 2017 we have sold, or in 2017 we sold 4,000 gardens. So each year it's getting bigger and bigger. And then the very last program we have is a WaterWise Landscape Seminar series, which is essentially a seminar about WaterWise landscaping principles. It could be about xeriscape, it could be about how to remove your turf, it could be about proper plant selection, and these are all, again, free to the public and taught by professionals. So with that, do you have any questions for me? I have this link for you to go. If you're interested in signing up for any of these programs, please don't hesitate to go to conservationcenter.org. And with that, are there any questions, or should we just jump right to the drawing? Yes.
The garden in a box. I was on the list last year. It's just more of a lurker. I don't have a yard in the house that we have. And it's, I guess, xeriscape. I don't know what it is. We don't water it. So the question is, would I have to have a sprinkler system if I got one of those? Because I don't do any watering right now with the plants that are somewhat surviving there.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
but it's ugly.
And you want to beautify it. Perfect. So it does not require you to have a sprinkler system or anything. I mean, I think it's something like 30 to 40% of our participants actually are just planting this garden into a, plot of dirt, essentially, or mulched area, or that has no vegetation whatsoever. So absolutely, if you have an area that you can put a garden in, please do sign up. Yeah, so that is a really good point. So it takes about 2 to 3 years to actually establish. That's why we're showing you the picture of when you get the plants, they're really nice and small, and then after a period of time, you have to water a little bit more up front, but then after about 3 or 4 years, they really only use 60% of the water that turf lawn would require. Oh yes, they do require water, just significantly less than the traditional landscape in Colorado. Yes. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
We have a lot of rabbits in our neighborhood. Do you have any garden in the boxes that are bunny-proof?
As far as I know, we do not have any bunny-proof gardens at the moment. However, we do have the opposite for pollinators. So we have, I think, 2 or 3 last year that were pollinator friendly. So it attracts bees, it attracts butterflies, and all of these are neonicotinoid free. So they're not going to hurt any of the bees. But that's a good idea. I'll suggest that.
Okay, so while we're on the subject of neonicotinoids, who controls all the, schools and parks and all the green space around us, and whether they get all sorts of Roundup applications or other things? Some communities are backing off from those. You know, and that involves water quality and plants and water use and lots of things.
Really? Corey?
Yeah, I guess I can take this one. So that is all handled by our parks folks. So I can't speak at all to what they use or don't use. Yeah, but I can certainly put you in touch with them if you'd like. Is there another question somewhere? Maybe not.
Well, thank you. Oh, one more.
What I would be really interested is to see a kind of a histogram to know where the water is going. Then in my house, then part is going to, I would like to know the average consumer, how much is used for the garden. There was something interesting in one of the presentation. You say that in winter you go through the same amount in a week instead of a day in summer, then it gives some number that it's a lot of water of the garden. But I would like to have a sense where it's the most efficient to save. For example, if I'm not going to focus on the 10%, I would like to prefer to focus on the 90% of my house.
Absolutely. I'm really sorry, because I actually had a slide that kind of laid that out pretty clearly. So just from memory here, so between 50 and 60% of residential water is used outdoors. So that's generally almost entirely going to be on your garden and on your grass. And then so the other 40 to 50% is going to be used indoors. And I honestly don't remember exactly which, I couldn't break it down by percentage which different fixtures are using the most water. But I think that showers and toilets, I think, might be the kind of the higher used kind of water consuming fixtures in the household.
Do you have any statistics on how much water your program has saved?
Yeah, so through, sorry, which one? The sprinkler inspections or the, as a whole? So, well, let's see, we can add it up here. So through Slow the Flow outdoor, we've saved since 2004, 108 million gallons, plus another 9.5. So that's roughly 118 million. And then I had a slide about how much the toilet saved, and I want to say it's 30 million. So 148. And then gardens, what did we say? Lifetime of another, like 80 million. Oh boy, I lost count. So over 200 million gallons in just these 4 programs. And we actually run a few other programs, just not on offer to the city of Louisville right now.
From the water treatment side, have you seen the numbers of gallons used by the city reflect these sort of changes?
Yeah, I would say in the summers, at least 60% is lawns. And then when you come in the house, I don't know the exact breakdowns either. It'd be a good question for our ops group, which I can get that information for you. But showers being probably the biggest indoor use, and toilets. I think he's dead on.
Yeah, and as far as overall water usage, the city's been relatively flat for the last couple of years. So even with the population increases that we've seen coming in, our usage has stayed the same. So you're kind of seeing that conservation is bringing the demand down overall.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've learned a lot tonight. Everything from the source to what happens to get it into our faucets and then out the other side. And I know that there's a lot of information to process. So if you guys do have questions, please feel free to stay after and talk to these guys one-on-one afterwards. We're going to do a quick drawing for those Raccios. And I apologize up front. being partially blinded. I apologize up front. We only have 2 of them here tonight, so the other 2 are going to have to be shipped to the 3rd and 4th winners, but we do have 4 to give away tonight. Do I have a volunteer who would like to draw the names? You would? He really would like to. Would you please? Here. You have to dig deep in there. Here you go. All right, we have Rose Terada. Oh, congratulations. We'll get you one of these. All right, I need another volunteer, sorry. How about one of you up here? This way, nobody can accuse me of rigging it.
Joy Herbers.
Yay, that's great. Joy Herbers, okay. All right, and again, 3rd and 4th winners, we're gonna have to ship it to you. I apologize. Do I have another volunteer? Run on up. Dig in deep. Pick your parents. Oop, we got 2. We get to swing. Oh, okay. Looks like. Actually, I think it's Annette. And Anderson? Is there somebody by that name? Did I read that right? Oh, wonderful. Okay, great. I'll get with you afterwards and make sure we have your right shipping address. And one more. These are some great volunteers here.
Jeff Davies.
Jeff Davies. Great. Oh. Different household, though? Okay, fantastic. All right, we'll get that to you. All right, thank you guys for coming out to this. This has been a really fun series. Just a quick recap, our first session was on energy and money. If you made it out to that, great. If not, we have the presentation on the sustainability page on the Louisville website. Our second one was on commute options, and there was a lot about bus routes and different options to take so that you don't have to be the sole driver in your car around Louisville and the adjacent communities. And then, of course, tonight's session. So I hope you all go home, drink a big glass of water, and appreciate better where it came from. Thank you.